morning, guys. So in our Zoom meeting on Tuesday, we had covered 11.3 day 1 notes and homework questions. And then I followed that up with starting 11.2 day 2 intro notes, and then kind of talked about what we would be doing on Thursday. So what I realized is the questions that I had done were not day 2 notes. This is actually the extra assignment that I posted Tuesday, but the questions were missing, so then I reposted on Wednesday. So this is extra assignment 6 that I had covered in the Zoom with you guys. So I had already done 3 questions with you. So if you want to do the extra assignment, you have a good start on that. This is kind of along the same concept that what we did on Monday and also what we're going to be doing today. But I didn't realize until this afternoon that I had actually given you guys the wrong information in the Zoom. So again, if you want to do the extra assignment, I have already done 2 questions with you guys. So what I'm going to do today is the actual 11.3 day 2 notes, not the ones that I did in the Zoom on Tuesday. And then I'm going to give you guys a couple questions to do for your homework. And again, this assignment is not due until Monday night at midnight. Okay? So my apologies for that, but I had kind of looked at the wrong information there. So what I'm going to start with today are the steps, similar to what I did on Monday. So on Monday, day 1 lesson, we had radicals, and we wrote the steps down. So these steps are not going to change at all. What is going to change is how your questions look. So instead of you having a radical, you're going to have a exponent power. But again, it's not going to change much of the solving that we are going to do today. So for step number 1, it's going to be the same. You need to isolate the variable, which is either going to have a half, quarter, third, 3/2, all of those variables still mean the same thing. So when you have x to the 1/2, it really means square root of x. If you have x to the 1/3, it means the cube root of x. If you have x to the 1/4, it really means the 4th root of x. And we also had done some stuff with the exponents where if it was a fractional exponent, so if it was something like x to the 3/2, it meant the square root of x cubed. So this is really what we're going to concentrate on today, is using rational exponents, and rational just means that you have a fraction up there. Okay? So step number 1 is going to stay the same. We're going to isolate the variable. So in this example A, it's already isolated. In example B, I'm going to have to get rid of that 7. And so some of these questions have them isolated already. Step number 2 is going to be to raise both sides to the exponent. So we're going to raise both sides to the reciprocal, and I mentioned that on Tuesday, exponent. So it's going to be all fractions today, and when you raise it to the reciprocal, it might not be a fraction. Step number 3, we're going to solve for x, just like we were before. Sometimes it's going to be linear. Sometimes it's going to be a quadratic, where you might have to do a little bit of factoring. Sometimes it might just be solving square roots. And then step number 4, you have to check for extraneous solutions. This is not optional. You must check. Because if you have a square root, or if you have any even root, the number inside has to be positive. If it's an odd root, then it doesn't matter because you can take the odd root of a negative number. So this is for even roots. If it's an even root, because you're solving, you might have to have a plus or minus sign as well. Okay? Depends on what the question looks like. Alright, so we're going to do steps A through D together. Those are the examples for the day, and then your homework is going to be the remainder of those. And if you have questions, please feel free to email me or Google me. Just not on Friday or Monday because I'm taking those days off. Happy Memorial Day to you guys. Okay, so the 1/2 power, remember, this really does mean square root of x equals 5. So this is another way of writing the same thing. If you guys were more comfortable with that, it means the same thing. So to get rid of the square root, we're going to square both sides. And this is what we covered on Monday, and then I talked about in the Zoom, okay? So instead of rewriting it every single time, because some of these powers are going to get, a little bit more complicated, I'm just going to raise it to the reciprocal power, and the power is 1/2, so I'm going to raise it to the reciprocal, and the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. When you do that, your exponents cancel, and then you just do 5 squared on the other side. Okay, now you have to check. It is an even root, it's a square root, so your check becomes ultra important here. So we're going to check x equals 25. So 25 to the 1/2 power equals 5. 25 to the 1/2 power means the square root of 25. And yes, the square root of 25 is 5. So it checks out beautifully. Okay, question number 2. I have the 4th root. So again, if you were more comfortable rewriting it like that, it means the same thing. I'm not going to do it when it gets a little bit more complicated down here, but I'm just showing you guys right now how they are, in essence, the same thing. So I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides because I'm isolating my variable here. Then I'm going to raise it to the reciprocal power. The reciprocal power of 1/4 is 4/1. And these exponents cancel, so I just have x to the 1st power, and then I'm doing 2 to the 4th power, and 2 to the 4th power is 16. And again, here's my reference sheet, so I don't need a calculator. 2 to the 4th power is 16. So x equals 16. Okay, I'm going to check my answer just to make sure. Kind of running out of room here. Might have to put it on a little sticky note. We'll see if I can cram it in here. So the 4th root of 16 plus 7 equals 9. The 4th root is 16, so here's 16. 4th root of 16 is 2. And 2 plus 7 is 9, so it does check out. I'm going to have to put my checks on sticky notes from here on out just so I have a little bit more space to do these questions on. I should have left a little more space on these. Okay, so first one was already isolated. Letter B we had to subtract and then raise it to the power. C and D are going to get slightly more complicated, just different varieties of the same thing. So I'm going to isolate my variable. So what I want to show you guys is how this equation really is nothing different than what you did in your Algebra 1. So if I forget all of this exponent and the x plus 1, and I just write my equation like that, that's in essence what we're doing. We're still going to subtract 5, we're still going to divide by 2, it's just there's going to be additional steps because that's not actually our linear question. So before we would have subtracted 5, then divided by 2, and got our answer. But this is not a linear equation, so I can't follow just those same steps. So what I'm going to do first is I'm still going to stick with my basic solving here, and I'm going to subtract 5. I'm trying to get this isolated by itself. Then I'm going to get rid of the 2 because I can't distribute the 2 because of the 1/3 power, so I'm going to divide by 2. So just like I showed you in the sticky note, same steps, subtract, divide. But after that, it's not the same steps because it's not a linear equation. So now we have a radical equation, and the radical equation is 1/3. So this technically means cube root of x plus 1. So now what I'm going to do is get rid of that 1/3 power by raising it to the 3rd power. The reciprocal of 1/3 is 3/1. I'm switching colors because I don't want to use Christmas colors anymore. I'm ready to get into the warm weather. Okay, so these cancel each other out, and I'm left with x plus 1, and then I do 2 to the 3rd power. 2 to the 3rd power is 8. 2 multiplied 3 times is 8. And then I still have some solving to do because I'm solving for x. I'm subtracting 1 here, and I get x equals 7. Alright, but the infamous last step, I have to check. So now I'm going back to my original equation. Plugging my answer that I got in. Okay, I'm going to do please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So parentheses, 7 plus 1 is 8. Exponent is 1/3. 8 to the 1/3 power means cube root of 8. So here's my 8. Cube root of 8 is 2. Now on the outside of my parentheses, I still have the 2. So again, I'm following please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So parentheses, exponents, multiplication. 2 times 2 is 4. Addition, 4 plus 5 is 9. And we don't have any subtraction. So that one does check out. I promise you guys, they're not always going to check out, so you have to check your answers. Okay? Alright, letter D, last one we're doing together. Step number 1 is to isolate the variable. So in letter D, this question has a 2 out front. So this time, what it's like is if you had 2x equals 250 in your regular algebra. So then we're going to divide by the 2. The difference is this question actually has an exponent, so it's not actually a linear equation. So I'm going to divide by 2, and I get x to the 3/2. 250 divided by 2 would be 125. And I have a 3/2 power. So I'm going to raise it to the reciprocal power. The reciprocal of 3/2 is 2/3. Trying to write small here and get this all fit in. The 3/2 and the 2/3 cancel each other out, so you're just left with a single x. 125 to the 2/3 power means cube root of 125 squared. Cube root of 125 is 5. And then I have to do 5 squared, which you guys should know what 5 squared is, but just in case. 5 squared is 25. So your answer is x equals 25. Alright, back to my infamous check. So now I'm going to check. X equals 25. Again, I'm using please excuse my dear Aunt Sally here. I know there's no parenthesis there, but I'm going to put some parenthesis in or else it's going to look really weird. Like I'm trying to do too much at one time. So parentheses. I'm going to evaluate 25 to the 3/2 power. Square root of 25 is 5 and 5 cubed. 5 cubed is 125. There's a 2 out front, so I'm going to multiply by 2. 2 times 125 is 250. Again, you can use a calculator for some of this work. However, you have to make sure that you show those steps. The check is not an optional at that point. Okay, your homework is to do questions 1 through 14. If you have questions, let me say this right now. Number 8 looks really weird. 8 is supposed to say x to the 1/3 power minus 2/5 equals 0, and I know that the computer had a difficult time kind of formatting that for me. Okay. Same thing with number 10 down here. What it should read is -1/2 x to the 1/5 power equals 10. So you're going to get rid of the fraction here. You're going to multiply by the reciprocal to start, because you can't divide by a fraction. Any questions that you have, bring them to the Zoom on Tuesday. Okay? This assignment is going to be due Monday night, but if you have questions, bring them to the Zoom on Tuesday, and then you can always resubmit your work. Have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe.